Thank you for staying with us. Now, Southwest ministers in the federal cabinet have urged the federal government to thoroughly investigate what happened at the Lekki Toll Plaza on the 20th of October 2020 in order to bring closure to all citizens. This formed part of deliberations at the week's Federal Executive Council meeting in Abuja. Tayamodu reports.
The Executive Council this week continued its approval of contracts for critical road infrastructure across the country and the FCT. To this end, it approved two memos from the Ministry of Works and Housing, the first being for the completion of the Oyo-Bumasho Highway, which is the 52-kilometer part of the Ilorin-Ibadan 145-kilometer highway, at an increased contract sum of 105.041 billion naira. The second memo was for the completion of a local Oweto bridge. This is the bridge across the river Benue that links Nasarawa and Benue states. An approval was given for a 9.348 billion naira variation to complete the bridge component and remaining work on the bridge.
All right, joining me in the studio to talk about this is security expert and CEO Goldwater River Sand Consult, Captain Aliyu Umar Babangida, retired. Thank you for joining us. Good morning. Good to have you here.
Thank you.
Let's look at how we got here. After the incident, there were conflicting statements with regards to if the army was deployed or not, if there were persons, if lives were lost, and conflicting statement, the governor speaking, Amnesty International also speaking, and then the army, retracing its or retracting its words, saying that they were invited. That was by the 81 Division of Lagos State, saying that the governor had asked them, to come in to ensure that the curfew imposed was effective, so to speak. And then all of the controversies leading up to where we are right now, where the government is saying that, or the ministers, the Southwest ministers are insisting or asking government to look into the matter, investigate the matter. Before we look at that investigations and how it should go, I wonder what you make of how we have been handling this issue so far.
Well, unfortunate as the incidents were, and unfortunate as the responses and denials were, if you profiled the situation and weighed it against what we usually see pre-end SARS protests, you discover that our security agencies are, permit me to use the phrase, victims of stereotype.
How so?
Stereotypism is something regimented agencies find very difficult to separate from being regimented. You can be regimented without being stereotyped. Now, these stereotypes are, put another way, doing the same thing the same way, and then ironically you want to get different results. It doesn't happen that way. Now, when you are functioning on 2020 Earth, Nigeria, a democracy for that matter, you know that things evolve.
Absolutely.
These evolutions mean these security agencies must imbibe what we want to call continuous improvement. So there were enough lessons learned in the past that should have assuaged or even prevented what happened at the toll gate. But unfortunately, when stereotypism weighs in, your lessons learned just get eroded. If you look at generally what happened in Lekki on that day, it's not really very different in principle from what happened in Zaria between El Zaki and the Chief of Army Staff.
Right.
So from what we saw in Lekki, would you say there were any lessons learned? No, I don't think so. Not because there were no lessons, but the stereotypical nature of swinging into action of our law enforcement agencies, the military inclusive, could just be where that problem lies. That's just about it in a nutshell.
the stereotypism
Yes.
is the issue, because
Yes, indeed.
some would say that in a democratic setting, because of what had been going on with regards to an end to police brutality, which was what even stirred up the protest in the first place.
Yes.
Perhaps the army was brought in because in a democratic society, it is the function of the police to maintain law and order, ensure that whatever measures are being put in place by government, the police are there. And so the army was brought in. Since the protest was about the police and brutality, they had to bring in the army. But so if you're saying lessons were not learned, what could they have done perhaps differently to have averted? Some would say there are rules of engagement. And so I'd like for you to touch on this issue.
Well, if you look at it again, the army went in there and got stuck, if you ask me. They went in there and got stuck. I said they got stuck because, if you recall, a similar thing happened in Zaria with El Zakis and the Shiite people.
Yeah, there was a procession.
Yes, and the army came in again and they were like, yes, no, then finally yes, then finally they showed up at some panel. And the whole thing dilutes the reckoning and image the army has amongst the people, citizens, amongst their peers globally.
And that has its implications.
Of course it does. Even amongst our enemies, the bandits, the crooks, all those clowns that run in the bushes and do stuff, when your reckoning is eroded, they become bolder.
Right.
So, but basically, I would have thought from that day onwards, post-Zaria, the army would have learned one or two things about having such engagements recorded. There's nothing wrong with having your own audio-visual version of an operation. But today, somebody didn't get wiser, is that it? I don't think so. It's about being stereotyped. You know, you have this, do I call it, tunnel kind of approach to situations. We must evolve with time. By now, we should have even soldiers, at the very least, the leader should have a camera on him. These devices are sold all over the world. You can buy them the way you buy candy. You put it on him, and probably even as the operation is ongoing, anybody, including the president, can watch live. Live as it's happening, he's seeing. So when people bring in claims, you can speak from a position of strength. You can come with superior argument and say, no, this is exactly what goes on. And when you have such coverage, live coverage, it also helps to ensure your men don't get a bit carried away or overexcited and go beyond normal rules of engagement stipulates. But when none of that is available, then your flanks are open to whatever people throw at you. And then you just have to go in and defend the entire mass deluge of evidence as it comes.
So as it stands, because they are also facing the panel in Lagos State, are you saying that they are not going to be able to speak from a position of strength because they are conflicting, statements and evidence?
Absolutely. We've seen different people come in, weigh in, and say different things. But supposing we had an audiovisual coverage, and supposing someone like the GOC actually watched a live rendition, live, on time, real-time rendition of that operation, things would have been managed much better. Right. At the point people started raising concerns, the stakeholders would have been called and said, you know what, the general was here, we had contact, visual and audio with the team on ground, and while it was being run, we had a live, on-time, real-time coverage of this situation. You could even talk to the commander from anywhere. If he's stepping out of line, you could call him to order and say, no, that can't be done. But none of this is done. And this is 2020 Earth. So you begin to wonder, other than stereotype, look, I have some very brilliant colleagues in service, you won't believe this. So other than stereotypism, I don't see where the challenge for our law enforcement agencies, including the armed forces, can come from. They must evolve with time. There must be continuous improvement in the way we do
What do
things.
you think could be the challenge for this continuous improvement? Because what you are pointing out is the use of technology, which the world has been advancing over the years now.
Well, if you look at it, I will say both sides are complicit. The law enforcement agencies are complicit, and our leaders, the politicians, are complicit. I'll start with the law enforcement agencies. I've said it severally on different media that our law enforcement agencies are allergic to figures. They don't like to crunch the numbers. And you see, one thing I have learned in my short life so far is if you don't measure anything, you cannot control it.
Right.
It's impossible to control anything if you don't measure it. To measure it, you need to be friendly with numbers. My friends, the politicians, don't like numbers either.
Why is that?
They don't like numbers because numbers don't tell lies. You cannot cook numbers. Go ask the accountants or the financial experts. You can't cook numbers. Numbers just tell you what is there. If you cook it, they'll tell you we've been cooked. If you didn't cook it, they'll tell you we're straight. So you are seeing people who have, do I say, a common allergy, if you like, to figures. And once you don't have that openness, there is no way you can really bring forth openness. And that exactly is where I bring the stereotype in. So you've seen chieftains in the security agencies who are probably like minds with their political bosses, and that's it. But then the bottom, the results, is taking the brunt.
So let's look at the calls for an investigation to this whole issue to get to the root of the matter, because what a lot of persons are seeking is closure, justice being done and seen to be done. You mentioned the Zaria incident, that there was a probe, but not much was seen
Absolutely.
with regards to that. Would this be different? Are you confident that perhaps if this is going to happen, because we already have a panel in Lagos that is investigating the matter, do you think there'll be anything different that will come out of this?
I wouldn't see anything different coming out of this. The only place where there could be slight, again, difference is in the lessons learned.
Which you said you don't see.
But when it comes to pinpointing and saying you did this wrong, you did that wrong, the necessary process assets, the management information systems, or if you like, say, field operations information systems are not there. You're going to be seeing yeses and nos, denials and acceptance. And, it's basically what I see for the panel, which is tomorrow, right?
Yes.
It's going to be a we versus them kind of thing. And that happens when, as I said, you, the we, do not have that superior, compelling argument, evidence to present. So you're going to come with that ambience of a we versus them posture or situation. But supposing you had your operations assets in form of audio and visuals, and you put everything back together, you piece it back together from scratch to finish, and you look at the situation and you answer questions, and where there are flaws, you take note and say, well, something will be done about it. You come out from such a situation stronger, you come out wiser. But when you come there with just your word against theirs, with what you can call, I don't even know the right word to use now, but let me just still say the we versus them posture, you're not going to be open to any corrections. Right. You're not going to be open to say, no, we're going to look and do things better. That's where the stereotypism I'm talking about, works against progress. There is, post-Second World War, armies were regimented and stereotyped. But I can tell you sometime from after the Cold War, the détente years in the 80s, those stereotypes had to be collapsed and things had to be modified to suit the evolving nature of mankind. And you can see mankind is evolving on a daily basis.
Are we ready
thanks to
for this, evolving situation? Are we ready to modify things? Like you have pointed out, the society man is evolving, things are changing.
Yes, on a daily basis.
Approach. And one major issue, which a lot of persons see as the elephant in the building, is trust, which is also key.
Well, one thing I want to say about are we ready to modify is we either modify or things will have to modify us.
Right.
Because at a point in time, take the SARS situation, what people saw as SARS, for us at my consoles, we saw different things. We saw across Nigeria, millennials, people born from 1980 to 2020 are millennials. We saw three kinds of millennials in there. The millennials, the super millennials, and the I generation. We call them Generation I.
Wow.
They are the
Some
latest
say
set of
Generation Z.
Generation Z. They are the latest set of millennials. And the intrigues also of the SARS riots split those millennials into two. We saw the educated and informed millennial versus the uneducated and uninformed millennials. But something again happened. All of them tested power in their own way, peacefully and violently. They now discovered that in their numbers, they could do much. Now, how would we have diffused the SARS riot? The SARS riot was not about, again, stereotypism. The IG will read the Riot Act and tell you this and that. Millennials don't learn or listen or reckon with that approach to problem solving. They learn at the push of a button. They get results. When I was in school, I have to take notes. Millennials don't take notes. They record the lecture live.
Yes.
I had to carry massive bags and books to school. Millennials carry
700
books downloaded on their phone. Even my toddlers at home now have Okponiwe or something like that. They are learning with. Okponiwe, sorry, I said Okponiwe. So you are looking at people who actually find you obsolete. If you want to talk to them, you have to talk to them with superior logic and argument, or else they're not going to you're not going to get their reckoning. These millennials run across the armed forces, the banks, the civil sector, you just call them youth. Last time I checked, there are 102 million of them in Nigeria out of our 200 million. The rest of us is me and you and the elders and children, babies. So you are looking at a situation where a very, very significant chunk of the Nigerian population really came out to vent their frustration with what's happening, which to them is outmoded.
Yes.
The immediate cause of which was the killing of an individual, but there were other remote causes.
Yeah.
Exactly, they just pent it up. And being youth, they are trendy and there is peer pressure. So it just spread. When I was young, we also had our trends. We had the kind of styles and trousers and shoes we loved to wear. We were not of the same religion. We were not of the same region. We did not come from the same ethnic delineations. But sometime in my life, there was this shoe called brogues.
Yeah.
And if you didn't have brogues, you were a cripple. You didn't have legs. The same thing with these youths. The moment SARS came out, it became trendy. It became a fashion. You had to belong. And you won't do right to try to be stereotypical in addressing it. You have to, first and foremost, come to their level. I'll give you a very wonderful example of some young millennial officers in the Army and Air Force who diffused the tension at the NYC camp and somewhere again. He just came and they just bonded one-on-one. They were speaking to their own kind of person within their age range. And what happened? He was able to tell them why they couldn't just do that. And it turned from a protest to a hailing. They were just hailing him and everything just
So as it is now, because we have to learn
We must learn.
The past to know
Exactly.
how to move forward.
Exactly.
What would be your summation with regards to this to avert any reoccurrence of, because we saw that I think earlier this week some youth still gathered trying to protest in Abuja.
We must understand something. The first mistake that was made was, for whatever reason, somebody saw it fit to take those children off the street. Permit my use of the word children. I say children out of compassion for them, because they are actually our tomorrow.
Right.
Yeah, I won't be here
But they
for...
would prefer the word youth.
Yeah, okay, youth. I won't be here for another 20 years. In another 20, I should be in my retirement, hopefully. But they will be very active in 20 years to come.
Absolutely.
So I see them as children of this country.
Okay.
They are a future, and since we have 102 million of them, it's a blessing. Now, how do we handle them, particularly during the SARS period? When such things are happening, we must, again, the law enforcement agencies understand something. Every protest has a lifespan.
Okay.
It starts from somewhere. It's like a fire. It starts from somewhere. Probably it escalates,
Right.
and at a point it
Quickly,
starts.
because we need to wrap up.
We must understand the dynamics of these people, citizens we call youth.
Okay.
How they are going to do that is left to be seen. But until we do that, we're going to walk at loggerheads with them.
Very, very key point there. And we do hope that we learn the lessons from now so to avert issues rising up again. Captain Ali Umar Babangida, retired. Thank you so much for your time.
You're most welcome. Good morning.
Well, let's tell you that the views and reactions of all our guests are theirs and have no connection with TVC News. So that's all on TVC Breakfast this morning. To stay safe and have a great weekend. Up next is Your View. Bye for now.